10 days after losing to the Kansas City Chiefs, the Ravens lose again, this time to the Las Vegas Raiders in their season home opener. Welcome to Ravens Talk. I'm your host, Stanley Njoku. As you mentioned, the Ravens lose to the Raiders 26-23 after having the fourth quarter lead, another monumental letdown for Ravens fans out there. We'll talk about that Ravens loss. We'll talk about the reasons for that loss, and we'll look ahead to see what the Ravens can do to potentially improve and right the ship on an 0-2 start. But first, a disclaimer. This will not be a fluff episode. No guests, no smiles. Well, there might be some smiles. I'm a funny guy. But this will not be the type of episode where if you're a Ravens fan who doesn't like to hear the harsh reality of your team, you'll want to tune in. So if this isn't you and you want to buy out, I do not bore any hard feelings. We'll see you next episode. But for those who want the harsh reality, the truth about the Ravens, then you want to stick around because this episode is definitely for you. Here we go. The Ravens suck. The Ravens are not good. They are not great at all. They are looking like a monumental disappointment in 2024. And it's unfortunate because there's really a few things that need to be done in order to right the ship. But from what we've heard from the Ravens coaches, primarily John Harbaugh, it does not seem like it's going to take place anytime soon. And as we mentioned last episode, this is not Major League Baseball. You do not have 162 games to get it right. You have 17 games. The Ravens have lost their first two. They have 15 more tries to get wins. And they need to get big wins fast. They've already lost two conference matchups against the Super Bowl champions and the Las Vegas Raiders, who look to potentially be one of the teams we're talking about come January, December, one of those teams that might stick around and be a potential threat. You got a tiebreaker loss to both of those teams. So it's not looking great right now. And what's the primary reason? The Ravens refuse to address the elephant in the room, the offensive line. Now, I've given you my thoughts on the offensive line. I've told you what the Ravens will need to do in order to right the ship. And it doesn't seem like it's going to happen anytime soon, based on what we've heard from John Harbaugh. And I'm irritated, not because the Ravens lost. The Ravens are going to lose games. Last year, the Ravens lost to the Colts. They lost to the Steelers twice, albeit one of those was when they've already clinched the 1 seed. The fact remains the Ravens have lost to bad teams before. But it's why they're losing these games that really irritates me. The Ravens are losing the games right now because they refuse to address their mistakes. They refuse to own up to their faults. And it's clear that Daniel Falele and Patrick McCarry should not be starting at the right side of the offensive line. Max Crosby, we talked about it, is more disruptive of a pass rusher than Chris Jones. Chris Jones is a great talent, future Hall of Famer, but what Max Crosby can do to disrupt your offensive line is noteworthy. So this was no surprise to see him have success. This was no surprise to see the Raiders' approach to this offense on Sunday. What does surprise me is that John Harbaugh continues to be steadfast in the notion that Daniel Falele and Patrick McCarry are the right pieces to be starting against premier pass rushers in the regular season. If this was the preseason, sure. Training camp, fine. But you're going up against and losing in the worst way the premier pass rushers. Micah Parsons is up next, guys. Do you think the Ravens are going to beat the Cowboys if they bring out that starting five lineup on the offensive line? They're not going to win. It's not going to happen. And so what irritates me is, one, yes, the Ravens refuse to address the elephant in the room. But what pisses me off is that John Harbaugh continues to poop in our cereal and call it milk. This is not the way. In fact, I'll let you listen to the press conference. This is what John Harbaugh had to say about the offensive line on Monday.
John, you have two new starters at guard, obviously. I mean, Voorhees kind of like a rookie after missing all last year. Falele, a new position. We've asked you about that throughout the offseason. What are you seeing from those two as far as through these first two games? Are you seeing progress from them? What's your assessment on where they are right now?
Yeah, talking about the two guards, those two guys, Andrew and Daniel, I think, yeah, we're seeing progress. But big picture volume, it's not progress that's measurable in a sense of you look at the thing and say, okay, overall it's getting better. It's progress in areas and there's other areas that show up, and I think that's pretty normal for young players. So when you put a young group of guys out there, young players at any position, especially in the offensive line, there are going to be growing pains. There's no doubt about it. And I think we've got to continue to work as hard as we can to make as many good plays as we can. We've got a lot of good plays happening out there, but we're just too inconsistent. And you talk about the offensive line, I think that's a fair evaluation, is inconsistent. It's almost randomly inconsistent, so that's something we've got to work through, but also across the board with our whole team. We're not a consistent football team right now. And if we become a consistent football team, and when we become a consistent football team, then we'll be a winning football team. Until then, it's going to be hard to do that. So we need to work to make that show up on Sunday. That's the goal, is to be a consistent executing team on Sunday.
Just going back to the offensive line, it looked like Roger Rosengarten took a step up in his second game. What did you see from him in his progress?
I did. Roger took really good improvement from week 1 to week 2. It was a rookie first game, now second game. I thought he stepped it up and played well. So that was his. Obviously, he's only played 2 games, but it was a major improvement from the week before. So let's hope he keeps on that track.
We know you've been rotating him in there in the midst of games, he and Makari. Would it be a situation, we've seen Makari pretty much go back in each time, would it be a situation if you felt like Rosengarten was hot or whatever at that time that he would just stick with him?
Well, I think it's possible, sure. I mean, Pat's playing well too, but Pat had, he's going to have some plays he wants back. So, the more plays you play, the more chance there are to have some inconsistencies. But, we're going to keep working both those guys in there. It's a good thing to have them both. I think that's a positive thing. And I want to get to the point where, the whole offensive line is playing at a consistent level. That's what we got to fight for, that we're playing on a consistent level across the board with the offensive line.
Rotations aren't ideal, but is that the only spot you would think about doing that type of rotation with during the game?
I'm opposed to it. It just depends on who you have, and who the options are.
From the outside perspective, at least, I'm talking about from not your meeting rooms or stuff, is that Ben Cleveland has held his own when he's played solid football. What does he have to do to become an option to play more snaps?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, if Ben had earned the job at right guard, he'd be the starting right guard. So, I mean, you look at the tape. He didn't beat out Daniel or anybody. I think Ben's a good player. I like Ben. I want Ben to take the next step. He's in what year is he in? 3rd year, or 4th year? He's in his 4th year. Ben knows what he needs to do. If he wants playing time, he knows how he needs to play, and he knows how he needs to practice when he gets that chance. So our evaluation right now is that Daniel outplayed Ben. Just fact, straight up. Matter of fact. If we thought Ben had outplayed Daniel, he'd be the starting right guard. So if I see that Ben's playing better than Daniel, then Ben will be the starting right guard, and he practices every day. So it's like just to tell all the guys, show me. And that goes, we're talking about Ben because that's the question. I love Ben. And I think Ben can be a great player. I want to see it. Just like I want to see it with Daniel. Okay, just I want to see it with all the players. So we'll keep fighting for that. And those guys will keep fighting for that. We coach our guys, and our guys compete, and we're going to continue to improve.
What else can you say? I understand John Harbaugh knows more about football. Well, he forgets more about football in a day than I'll probably know in my entire life. But I'm not an idiot. You're not an idiot. Everyone here, for the most part, has eyes that can see as clear as day. These guys are not sustainable to the success of the Ravens franchise in 2024. As far as winning. Now, if you just want to coach them up and just screw the regular season, say that. Tell me that so that Ravens fans aren't spending money on tickets. Price increases, by the way. Ticket prices have gone up. Ravens fans aren't wasting their time on Sundays. We got kids. We got family we can talk to. We can go to church. Spend some extra time with the pastor out there. There are other things Ravens fans can be doing besides watching a product that's a work in progress for no reason. You want them to get reps? Get the reps in practice with the 2s and the 3s. Stop wasting our time. Stop wasting Lamar Jackson's time. And stop wasting the other players who are brought here to try and win a championship. Derrick Henry has to be livid. He just has to be livid. Now, you can say Ben Cleveland didn't win the starting job against Daniel Faalele. Daniel Faalele won. Did Ben Cleveland break a foot or something? Is there an injury concern or a doghouse that Ben Cleveland found himself in? Because we watched Ben Cleveland last year. Was he the greatest? No. But he wasn't what we're seeing out of Daniel Faalele right now. And that's no knock on Daniel, but it's just the fact of life. Max Crosby had a field day. And this isn't just a knock Daniel Faalele. Having Rosengarten perform admirably against Max Crosby for a certain period of time, to hold his own, to give Lamar Jackson time, to give Derrick Henry time, and to just remove him and bring in Patrick McCarry and have the offense stall in the last few drives of the game, it doesn't make sense. And I've been the main advocate for John Harbaugh for years. And there's a reason for that. He's a Super Bowl champion. You can say what you want about him getting the roster out of Brian Billick and, having Ray Lewis, who was past his prime, Ed Reed, who also was a guy who was pretty much past his prime. John Harbaugh deserves credit for winning the championship. He does. But that doesn't excuse the recent trend that we're seeing where this team is giving up fourth quarter leads, where this team is being outcoached by first and second year head coaches. It just doesn't add up. So John Harbaugh needs to take some of the blame. I'm sorry. And he for sure deserves total blame for the personnel that are out on the field on Sunday. Daniel Faalele, Patrick McCarry. You drafted Rosengarten. It's clear to me and anyone watching film. This isn't 1996. We have access to all 22. If you're a fan of the show, Pivotal Moments, episode 2 coming out this week, we'll show you the difference between what Patrick McCarry has done and what Rosengarten is doing. It's night and day. Yeah, Rosengarten had a bad game against the Chiefs. Sure, fine, I'll give it to you. But if you're going to spend time bringing up a rookie, do that. Don't leave it. Voorhees, a guy who's out of position, clearly doesn't look like a guard on the field, and leave Ben Cleveland, who, albeit wasn't the greatest last year, 100% better than Daniel Faalele. I will sing that song until the cows come home. You cannot tell me. You cannot sit in the press conference and lie to the fans and lie to the pundits out there, analysts, and say that Ben Cleveland lost that starting job. There's no way. What are you seeing? What are we missing? Reporters were at camp. We all saw it. It wasn't like camp was close to the reporters out there. We all saw it. Preseason football was televised. We saw the games. So unless there's something that we're missing, stop lying. Just stop lying. This is not the time to give up a season where across the board, anyone would tell you that this team talent-wise is poised for a potential Super Bowl run. I give you the loss to the Chiefs. Loss to the Raiders, unacceptable. And it's not that they lost, it's how they lost. It's not even how they lost, it's why they lost. Because the coach or coaches, it might not just be on John Harbaugh, could be Todd Monken, could be the O-line coach, continue to be stubborn. Continue to be stubborn. Admit fault. Admit you're wrong. Right the wrong. And bring Ben Cleveland before it's too late. The Ravens do not have a lot of time. The Dallas Cowboys lost, if it happens, and if this starting five lineup is what was out there on Sunday, yes, the Ravens will in fact lose. You can afford a loss to the Cowboys. After that, you got the Bills and Bengals. What? You really might be 0-5 heading into week 6. It could happen with this O-line. You cannot tell me you'd be surprised with that outcome. With the slate of pass rushers, you saw what Trey Hendrickson did. I'm fumbling on my words because I'm so irritated. You saw what Trey Hendrickson did against the Chiefs. That boy can get after the passer. We know what Michael Parsons can do. We know what the Bills are capable of. They've looked good the last 2 weeks. Why are you playing these games? The coaching staff has to have a sit down. And if not the coaching staff, Steve Bisciotti, who's the fan and owner of the team, needs to step up. This is a colossal failure across all of the front office, from top to bottom, and into the coaching staff. It's unacceptable. You cannot have this. You brought in Derrick Henry to become a dominant run team. And statistically, yes, the Ravens are great at running the football right now. But a lot of that is because of Lamar Jackson. And you brought in Derrick Henry to alleviate some of that pressure. The running game's worse this year. The running game's worse. Am I tripping to say that? Somehow the running game has got worse. Not somehow, we know how. An inability to upgrade the interior line of your offense, and the psychotic concept that rotating your tackle somehow makes you a better football team. It doesn't. It creates liabilities across your offensive line and further increases the likelihood that your two-time most valuable player, quarterback Lamar Jackson, gets injured. This isn't rocket science. I know there's some aspects of football that are complicated. I know there are things behind the scenes that we do not know about or are not privy to, but this is as simple as it gets. Bring your best guys out there and stop playing. Your stubbornness lost you the game against the Raiders. Your inability to outcoach Andy Reid lost you the Chiefs game twice this year. You're running out of time. And if you're asking me if John Harbaugh's seat is hot, it is muy caliente. It's hot. Because if I'm pissed off, the players are pissed off. If the players are pissed off, it's going to get to the front office. And if Steve Bisciotti hears about this and gets wind of it and hears the right things, because that's how it always goes down. Who's to say? And now we're hearing from fans, oh, we should have kept Mike McDonald. How am I going to combat that? As an advocate of John Harbaugh for the last 5 years, who said the Ravens made the right choice in retaining John Harbaugh and letting Mike McDonald walk to Seattle. How am I supposed to combat that argument right now? It's impossible. You're sabotaging your franchise. I said it on social media. I witnessed football malpractice, courtesy of John Harbaugh, on Sunday. It's just inexcusable to have Daniel Falele and Patrick McCarry out there. When you have Ben Cleveland, you have Rosengarten. You want to train somebody, you want to give them reps, give it to the rookie you spent a second round draft pick on. Why is this hard to comprehend? Why is this hard to understand? Why are reporters asking you questions and you're looking at them like they're crazy? The Ravens are in trouble. It's not looking good. Someone has to go over there and tell them to stop the stubbornness. Now, of course, we could be wrong about John Harbaugh. Ben Cleveland could be 10 times worse than Daniel Falele somehow. Maybe he forgot how to play football over the offseason. Maybe. Maybe Rosengarten has a tell in his game that's making him a liability in practice, and he's afraid that it's going to be found out come game day. Sure. It's not worth it. It's not worth finding that out. It's not worth losing your job if that is the case. Put in Rosengarten. He's your right tackle. Train him up that way. Rep him up. Get Daniel Falele out of there. He's a tackle. If something happens to Rosengarten, plug him in. He's a tackle. I mean, yes, I'm a little irritated, yes, because I'm a fan of the sport, and it's just ridiculous to see how a team can just fumble the bag. I mean, they were clearly the better team on Sunday, and they lost it due to personnel issues. Ben Cleveland was active. Rosengarten played, and when he played well. And when he wasn't there, the right side was a liability. Fix it. Fix it. John Harbaugh's seat is officially hot after 2 weeks of football, which is something I never thought I'd say. But he has an opportunity to right the ship. It's not over. The top two teams in the AFC North both have losing records. I'm more confident in the Bengals right now than the Ravens. I'm more confident in the Steelers right now than the Ravens because this O-line is just looking awful. Awful, with no clear view of peace in sight for Lamar Jackson. That's how I see it. It's not on the offensive line, though. When we come back, we'll talk about what the defense did in week 2 and how I think that this may be a sign that things may not be going all right in Baltimore as far as the defense is concerned. Next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Got on a little bit of a rant there, but cooled off a little bit. And now we're on to the defense. Defense, I'm not as concerned with the defense as I mentioned last week as I am with the offense, but there are clear struggles with the defense that go way before Zachary Orr became DC. Now it's clear that there will be growing pains with Zachary Orr as DC. There are certain things that I just do not like that I'm witnessing out of Zachary Orr and the way he's calling plays, most notably, not a lot of Kyle Hamilton at the line of scrimmage. He's not blitzing Kyle Hamilton enough, in my opinion. It just doesn't seem as though he has a full grasp of what his players are capable of. A lot of looks from someone who's definitely spent a lot of time with the linebackers that have more of a clear role. Roquan Smith had a great game. Looked like he bounced back from his poor performance against the Chiefs. But all in all, it just seems as though this defense is in dire need of a change. It just, something's off with this defense. Now, Nate Wiggins, who suffered a car accident and was unavailable for week 2, may be the piece. TJ Tampa, another rookie. He may get his opportunities. But to just segue back to the offense for a little bit, because I'm still a little pissed off about that. Imagine putting TJ Tampa in instead of Brandon Stevens and saying, we really like what we saw from TJ Tampa in mini camp and rookie mini camp, and we just like his skill set. And Brandon Stevens is, he'll get a shot. He knows what he needs to do in order to be a starter. Do you see how stupid that sounds? Do you see how dumb that sounds coming out of my mouth? Now, it's not exactly the same, but you get my point. It just sounds so stupid. Anyway, that's my tirade. Back to the defense. I think the defense just needs to gel, get themselves together. I'm not sure if this is going to be an easy fix. I don't think this is something that's going to be resolved in one day. I think that Zachary Orr has his tendencies. He knows what he wants to do. He knows how he wants to be. And I'm not sure if it's going to work out as far as this season. I think maybe next season he'll maybe take a step forward. But I just see too many subtle miscues and mistakes and the inability or the wherewithal not to want to get your star players in the best position to make plays. And that's something that Mike McDonald did to perfection last year. I mean, he knew exactly where to put his guys and how to do it. He wasn't as aggressive, and therefore not a lot of mistakes were made. And that's something that, Mike McDonald Mike McDonald being here last season was great because the Ravens, of course, didn't lose that many games down up in the fourth quarter. And that's due to his lack of aggression. He didn't really blitz linebackers like that. He mostly blitzed DBs, and if he did blitz a DB, he'd bring a guy up to cover. He was definitely coverage-based. He was not going to make the big mistake, and it definitely was frustrating for opposing offenses. So it's something that Zach Orr may need to implement. He already said on multiple occasions that he's a more aggressive DC than Mike McDonald, and we're seeing that. But having a big lead in the fourth quarter and losing that, some of that falls on the DC. In fact, a lot of that does. Some of it falls on the defensive backs. Some of that falls on the defensive backs. And, of course, it's early and the DBs can get a handle of it and get better. But it just something seems off. And I know you guys agree with me on that. Comment below in the comments if you're on YouTube or if you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Make sure you comment on my social media and find out or give me a scoop on how you're feeling about the defense. But I'm not too worried about the defense yet. I just think the philosophy may need to change. It may not be a professional player problem. I think it's more of a philosophy change that needs to come. Just dial it back a little bit. You may not get as many sacks, but you won't be giving up 10-point leads in the fourth quarter if you do that. And get Kyle Hamilton more involved, Zach. Come on. Well, that's pretty much my gist about the defense. I think that, the Ravens do have some work to do in that regard, but I'm much more concerned about the offensive line and the reason behind the offensive line struggles. I mean, to me, it's just clear as day. Defense, they'll get their act together, I believe. Zach Orr, the microscope will definitely be on him, and hopefully he improves this season. I don't see it. I think it's going to be something that they'll need to address in the offseason, but there's a chance he decides to be less aggressive and take the Mike McDonald approach, something that I will be very in favor for. But maybe that's just because I'm a Mike McDonald lover and he's doing great things in Seattle right now, so I don't know. We'll see. I still think the Ravens made the right call with Zach Orr if they're going to leave and push out Mike McDonald to Seattle by not retaining him. Something that Ravens fans are very upset about, even though, again, as you mentioned, totally on board with keeping John Harbaugh for 2024 season. It's just making me look bad because he's been coaching so terribly. When we get back, we'll focus a little more on John Harbaugh. This is the John Harbaugh roast for sure, and he deserves it. I don't care what you say. He deserves it. We're going to dissect John Harbaugh because his coaching decisions, personnel and otherwise, are the reason for the Ravens' loss in this game, and maybe could be the reason for their loss in the future. We'll talk about it next on Ravens Talk. Welcome back to Ravens Talk. Talked about the offense. We talked about the defense. Now it's time to get down to it. John Harbaugh fumbled the bag. There's no two ways about it. He needs to take accountability, something that he rarely does. I mean, it sounds like he does, but if you really listen, he's not really taking accountability. He's just, this is who I am, and we're going to lose or win games this way. I think we won more games than we lost. I think he made a comment on Monday that, you lose fourth quarter leads is because you have a lot of fourth quarter leads. Shut the hell up. I'm sorry. No disrespect to you, John. Shut the hell up. That's dumb. If you have fourth quarter leads, yes, it's because you're a good football team, but retaining fourth quarter leads comes down to coaching. Coach those boys up not to give up the fourth quarter leads. Period. You can get the success of being the fourth quarter lead maestro. Congratulations, John. You're the best fourth quarter head coach of all time in the beginning. Sure, great. But it's 60 minutes. Not 57, not 58, as my boy Trippy would say. Not 59 and 30 seconds. You have to play for 60 minutes. Those are the rules. I didn't make it up. Those are the rules. Talking about how, you have a lot of fourth quarter leads means I'm a good football team. If you lose a lot of fourth quarter leads, are you a bad football team? Are you a bad coach? I mean, what are we talking about here? Again, just nauseating to hear just the lack of accountability and the overall lack of direction that this team is going, at least in a positive sense, as far as making those changes on the offensive line. And it's not just the O-line. John Harbaugh had 2 chances to potentially, in his words, get the call right as far as throwing the red flag and challenging these plays. These were challenges that should not have been made. Now, is it the guy upstairs at the top telling John Harbaugh what to do? Is it John making these decisions? I think he came up on Sunday and said that, one of those challenges, he didn't have a lot of time to make a decision, and he thought that based on what he saw and the leverage, and yada, 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 stop. You're making dumb challenges. If you had to think about whether or not the challenge is right or wrong, it's wrong. Timeouts are a precious commodity, especially in the second half. I don't want to see a timeout called in a Ravens game again until there are at least 2 minutes left and you're down. Period. I'm done with wasted timeouts. The time management issues have got to stop. He's been a head coach in this league since 2008. Enough. Take ownership. Take ownership of your mistakes and flaws. That's all it is. Your challenges cost the Ravens the game. It was a dumb challenge. Shouldn't have done it. Period. That's all you got to say. That was a bad challenge on my part. Probably could have used an extra timeout. Yeah. You're right, John. Yeah. Won't happen again. Awesome. Thanks. I love to hear that. I love to hear people take accountability. Why not coaches? Anyway, John Harbaugh's challenges cost the Ravens for sure, at least a timeout or 2. Decision making, and he made the point to point out that the punting wasn't exceptional either, which he's correct. Stout wasn't the greatest today. In fact, that 24-yard punt likely was the nail in the coffin. But where is the accountability on the coaching staff? And not just, we need to coach better. I mean, I want to hear concrete, scientific even, explanations about what are you going to do to improve as a coaching staff. I'm not just going to pile on John Harbaugh here. The entire coaching staff needs to get together and improve. And I say all this with the mindset that the Ravens, on paper, top 3 roster. So you gotta work it out. The Ravens losing, there's a chance the Ravens don't make the playoffs, guys. Statistically speaking, being 0-2, their chances for making the postseason are way less than if they had won that game and been 1-1. So they're behind the 8 ball for sure. They need to find a way to shore up these things. Again, I'm criticizing John Harbaugh pretty heavily this episode, but all in all, I still think that John Harbaugh is a hell of a coach. He just needs the flaws in his game. And their flaws, because he's been doing this the entirety of his career, are beginning to take shape and are magnified because of, 1, the personnel on offensive line sucks. 2, you got a new DC who's still getting amplified. This is the second time calling plays as a defensive coordinator. You got a star QB. So what does that mean? It means potential, expectations are high, results are low. There's two people that always get looked at first. Obviously, the quarterback is one, and the head coach is 2. Lamar Jackson's played pretty well this season. What more can you ask of Lamar given the circumstances? So the attention's on John Harbaugh. And that's who I'm going to point my finger at after these first 2 weeks. Again, all that considered, and John Harbaugh, I'm sure, is going to talk to his coaches and players about this. 2 possessions go differently for the Ravens. They're 2-0. But that's not what happened. And even based on those results, I'd still criticize the decision with this offensive line. I'd still criticize the play of the defense and the inability to hold a 10-point lead. All of that would still be on my mind. But it's magnified because you're 0-2, because you haven't got a win. And it doesn't appear to be a win in sight. There doesn't appear to be a win in sight. Next episode, we'll talk about the matchup between the Dallas Cowboys. But if you watch this episode, you probably know where I'm going with the outcome of this upcoming game. Something has to change. So John Harbaugh completely 110% gets the blame for this loss. Whether or not he's to blame for the outcome of this season is completely up to John Harbaugh and that coaching staff. I believe that his seat is one of the warmest in the National Football League. And depending on what happens in these last 15 games and on, Ravens going to have a new head coach in 2025. That's going to do it for us here at Ravens Talk. I'm sorry for the harsh reality that I've pressed upon you Ravens fans, but you need to know this is how I'm feeling, and how I'm feeling, I share it to the masses. And if I'm feeling this way, trust me, I am not the only one. Football is not that type of sport. I see it, and if I see it, then others see it as well. Hopefully the Ravens do what they have to do to improve upon their performance and get right and head to the win column. We'll talk about that game again, week 3, coming up in the next episode, but the Ravens have some work to do. 0-2, not good. No bueno. We'll talk about it next week. Well, next episode, I should say. But until then, enjoy your week, guys. See you soon.